All right. Good evening and welcome back to a regular meeting of the Burbank City Council on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. Today's study session item is a discussion on the revised administrative draft of the Media District Specific Plan and an update on the environmental analysis. Before we start, do we have any disclosures from council?
Madam Mayor, I live in the scope of this project, so I'll have to recuse myself from this discussion.
Thank you, Councilman Rosati. And I myself also live within the boundaries of the Media District Specific Plan, and out of an abundance of caution and on recommendation from our city attorney, I will also be recusing myself from this discussion. So I will now pass it on to the Vice Mayor to welcome staff and continue. We'll see you back at 6.
See you in an hour. Bring back some stuff for us. All right. Let them step out. Okay. All right, so this evening we welcome Amanda Landry, Principal Planner in the Community Development Department, to begin the presentation. Welcome, Ms. Landry.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Takahashi and members of the City Council. Again, my name is Amanda Landry. I'm a Principal Planner with CDD Planning, and I'm the Project Manager for the Media District Specific Plan Update. I also have with me tonight Senior Planner David Kim, who's been managing the project with me. Tonight, I'll be providing the Council with a status report on the Media District Specific Plan Update, or MDSP, and the project's next steps. And as a reminder, this project started in 2022, and it's now nearing completion. So the Media District is located in the southwestern corner of the city, and it's home to several major businesses, including the studios, including Warner Brothers Studios, the Walt Disney Studios, the Burbank Studios, the Ranch Lot. It's also home to other businesses like Providence St. Joe's Hospital and Providence High School. In addition to this, there are many other independent businesses supporting those larger businesses. Given the strong business setting, the Media District is considered a regional employment center, and it's ideally situated as a place to build new housing, critical housing that is needed to address the city's 3-to-1 jobs to housing imbalance. The project team came before the City Council last summer to introduce the initial administrative draft of the MDSP update and describe its contents. Since then, the team has received significant and productive feedback from the public and other Media District stakeholders at 2 public workshops and multiple one-on-one conversations. Based on the feedback received, the project team engaged the services of DUDEC, a professional planning and urban design company with extensive experience working in the Burbank community. And we engaged their services to help us edit and revise the draft plan with a focus on the objective development standards. In addition to the work by DUDEC, the project team collaborated with the Burbank Water and Power Department and the Public Works Department to update the state-mandated discussion in the specific plan about infrastructure, and they were able to help us more accurately describe the city's infrastructure resources. And then the project team also significantly updated the required implementation chapter. And the implementation chapter describes the specific and detailed future actions that are needed to fully implement the plan if the City Council adopts it. At this time, the revised administrative draft is available for public review, and this review period will coincide with the release of the draft environmental impact report. The revised administrative draft, which was included in the staff report as Attachment A, reflects the extensive work that was completed, particularly to the objective development standards, which were overhauled in response to the community feedback. The project team was very careful to maintain the original community-driven intent behind the objective development standards, which was to preserve context sensitivity, but eliminated or significantly revised overly complex or confusing strategies. For example, the project team revised the setback requirement from an overly complicated street and neighborhood setback strategy to a more straightforward range of setbacks depicted on a simple map. Overall, the development standards continue to focus again on providing simple and clear direction to soften the bulk and mass of buildings, protect the privacy of adjacent residential properties, and to enhance architectural design. DUDIC was able to help us craft a set of graphics to accompany these objective development standards, and these new graphics will help staff to provide better customer service to both the development community that's interested in building in Burbank and to residents nearby to understand what could be built. Because the specific plan is a discretionary project, it's subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. And for this project, an environmental impact report, or EIR, is being prepared. The intent of an EIR is to objectively inform the public, including decision makers such as the council, about the project's potential environmental effects. It's also intended to inform the public about possible alternatives and measures to mitigate any adverse impacts. This detailed analysis is important because it helps ensure that the environmental consequences of a project are considered before it's approved, and it also provides the public with an opportunity to comment on the project and its potential impacts. So, after the administrative draft was completed in June 2024, last year, the team has been actively coordinating with subject matter experts in the city and the city's environmental consultant, RINCON, to complete the extensive environmental analysis that is needed for the EIR. The city has also opted to prepare what's called a programmatic EIR, which looks at the upper limits of all of the planned policies. And there's several benefits to this. This would help streamline future smaller projects by providing a comprehensive broad level overview of environmental impacts that they can tier off of. That would greatly reduce redundant analysis and speed up individual development reviews. So this review and analysis is wrapping up, and the draft EIR will soon be released for a mandatory public review period. So this graphic provides the council with an overview of the bigger picture of the CEQA process and kind of dials in on where we are in that process. So the CEQA process began with the distribution of a notice of preparation and a 30-day scoping period, which we have completed. And we're approaching now the completion of the draft EIR, and when it's completed, we will release it for a mandatory 45-day public review period. And this is accompanied by our notice of completion and notice of availability. And again, this period will allow the general public, other public agencies, any interested party to provide comments on the EIR. Once that review period is over, the project team will look at all of the comments that are received, prepare any analysis that's necessary to respond to those comments, and then issue a final EIR. If, as required, the team will also prepare mandatory environmental findings, and if there are any significant impacts of the project, the team will prepare a statement of overriding considerations, and then present it to the council for consideration. Assuming the plan is approved, the project team would then file the required notice of determination with the county clerk in the state, and this serves as the official record. So the graphic now describes where we are in the overall process of the MDSP update and what the next steps are to bring the complete package to the council for consideration. So as you can see, we're approaching the overall conclusion of the project, and again, we're entering to the state mandated CEQA process. And the project team wanted to make ourselves available to the City Council for any future study sessions to go into a deeper dive on any of the content of the plan before the team formally presents the project to the Planning Commission and again back to the City Council. We've listed on this graphic the tentative dates for the next steps, and as you can see, we're hoping to get it done by the spring. There are several other specific plans that are currently also in process, most notably the Golden State Specific Plan and the Downtown Transit-Oriented Development Specific Plan. Those plans are in very similar positions to the MDSP update. They've been doing very similar analysis, and they rely on the same technical analysis for their EIRs. So each of those projects will be coming to the council in the near future with updates on their progress. On January 13th, the Burbank Rancho Neighborhood Specific Plan, which is another specific plan that's currently in process, will be providing the council with an overview of their background research and initial public outreach, and focusing on the equestrian community in the Rancho, including information on horses, where they live, where they travel, their major amenities and destinations. Currently, at this time, at this study session, staff is seeking general comments from the City Council on the plan policies and their ability to effectively meet the plan's 3 overarching goals of contextual development, transit-oriented growth, and streamlined housing production. And city staff is also requesting feedback on any potential study sessions the council may want. And that wraps up my presentation. There are, again, a few more opportunities for public engagement coming forward in the near future, most notably during that draft EIR comment period, which is about to begin. And we encourage those that are interested to continue to participate in the project, to check out our website or contact staff. I've listed my contact information here and David's, and we encourage people to reach out to us directly. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Landry, for the presentation. As this is a study session, there will be no public comment. We'll go straight to council questions and comments for staff. Do council members have questions they'd like to start with? Yeah, Councilmember Anthony.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask about a question that was presented at public comment. The specific plan will come back later for the general plan, full adoption. I understand that. But in this specific plan, is there any language in there about the hotels and their use? I know that we previously, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, talked about hotels. There was a discussion about should they all be planned development, and I think we as a body settled on a CUP, which I think is the lowest barrier to get something done, but it's not zero. It's not by right. Is that mentioned anywhere in this, or are we only dealing with that when we get to the general?
No, in the, Councilmember, the draft specific plan does have a permitted use list in there in the Chapter 6, I believe, that shows that hotel and motel uses are conditionally permitted through a CUP process.
Okay.
So that has carried forward and still is the intent of the plan.
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I couldn't find it in there, so yeah, thank you. All right.
Councilmember Mullins?
Thank you. Couple of questions, and one, of course, the obvious for the public, our infrastructure, sewer, electric. I know you mentioned that you've been working with the other departments. Can you elaborate about how prepared are we with the infrastructure to have all services ready to go with the adoption of the specific plan?
Yes, for the Media District Specific Plan area itself, our coordination with Burbank Water Power and Public Works, we do have adequate capacity to serve the Media District Specific Plan, and we have ongoing research and analysis to look at the citywide ability, and that will be addressed in the forthcoming draft environmental impact report.
So it's something that you're currently working with right now to
Correct.
make sure that everyone's ready to go.
Yes.
Once we have
It's
this.
a very extensive process.
Yes, I can imagine. So that would be revealed with the EIR.
Yeah.
And I know you said it's going to be released soon. Do we know around when exactly?
We're hoping within the next few weeks.
Okay.
All of the sections have been completed. We're doing some internal review, just fact checking and making sure it's ready to go, and then it will be released.
And in the, I believe it was mentioned in the report, there were 4 technical studies. Where are they available? Where can they see those studies?
So they support the EIR, and we can make them available as part of the release of the draft EIR.
Okay, that would be great because I don't believe they can be found now.
No,
So-
since we've been using them to do our analysis, they haven't been published.
Okay. I have, the other question I have concerning, obviously, the BRT and SB 79, which I know council received a few emails concerning that. And given that we are looking at a future date for SB 79 discussion, how is that looking at the actual discussion of SB 79, the BRT project, and whether we're going to move forward with it as a whole? Because again, the SB 79 is unknown. How are we supposed to look at these at this specific plan now and make or provide feedback to staff without really knowing what's going to come up with SB 79? So how is staff preparing for that? And can we assure the public that whatever implementation and whatever we're doing with SB 79 and the BRT, that is something that's going to be discussed before any final media district is adopted?
Yeah, that's correct. The staff has developed an internal working group with the city attorney, transportation planning, and planning to study the requirements and implications of SB 79. And we will be coming to the council in, I believe, January to present the council with that information. We can include in that analysis any potential impacts to our ongoing work that we're doing and considerations for the council to discuss. And that would be happen before the media district returns back to the council for any formal consideration.
Thank you. However, I'm seeing even heads shaking in the back as if what you're saying is not going to happen. So as a council member, and I know it's not your responsibility, it's my responsibility to figure this out, I just want the public to hear, and I know on my behalf as a council member that I will look at SB 79 and the impact of S 79 and also BRT before any final adoption is taken, whether it's this media district or the Golden State or downtown or any plan. We need to figure out what we're doing first.
Absolutely, and that's the intent of the forthcoming meeting in, I believe, January, to present all those options to the council.
Okay, I see Mr. Prescott is coming up.
Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, Patrick Prescott, Community Development Director. We are aware and share concerns, the council's and community's concerns about the impacts and implications of bills like SB 79. We are undertaking analysis of that law that takes effect July 1st, and no policy document we bring to you, including the Media District specific plan, will be without consideration of those laws. We did not stop working on the specific plans when AB 2011 was adopted or SB 35 was adopted. We continued working with the understanding that those laws are out there, they're going to impact us. But we understand that there may be implications, and it will all be incorporated accordingly into the specific plans.
Thank you.
I promise.
Thank you. I needed to hear that assurance. I trust what staff said, and I know that we have discussed, because that was my request to bring SB 79. I was informed that it will be coming in January. So for those who are out there that were looking to see the date, and I do appreciate your coming up and making sure to state that on the record, because I want the public to be assured that we're going to dive deeply into it before we adopt anything.
Yes, and you know, next year there may be another housing bill to consider.
God, I hope not.
We're always ready. We're always ready to pivot.
I can't take any more bills being adopted. Thank you,
the
Mr.
nature of things
Prescott.
these days.
Okay. So question regarding some of the information in the report. One in regards to, and I'm just curious what other hotels do. In your report, which is something, I know it's minor, but it does take space, and I don't know if it's necessary to have. So it says 1 bike for every room key. And then on the other hand, you said 1 car per every hotel room key. I can understand cars because people are visiting, might rent a car. Is this the standard now is to have a space for bikes? Because if I'm out in a hotel visiting somewhere, especially in the media district, it's not like going to the beach. Do I need a bike? Do we have a space for that? What's the requirement, and is this normal?
Yes, bike parking requirements are normal. The city BMC already includes bike parking requirements, including the recently adopted CSODs, the Complete Our Streets Objective Development Standards. It refers to bike parking requirements. So it's standard.
And is that so standard with even other cities? This is
Yes,
the
yeah.
requirement of what we do? Because I was like a bike for each key. I don't know. It didn't make sense. Parking laws? Is that?
Oh, for employees.
Oh, for employees. Okay, that makes sense. I was looking at me as a visitor to a hotel. I'm like, why would I want to have a bike there? Okay, thank you. Also, I wanted to find out if, and I didn't see it in the report, the TDR, if it was defined, and in regards to, can somebody transfer that if they don't complete the whole project? Is it transferable?
So the Media District Specific Plan currently does allow for transfer of development rights, or TDR, and the updated plan also will include policies for transfer of development rights. In the draft, in the revised administrative draft that we just released, it outlines the intent behind that policy. So it describes how there will be designations of sites that can donate or sell off their development rights and where they can be received. There is in the Chapter 10, which is the implementation chapter, an item to adopt a separate TDR policy for the city, working off of the existing example already established in the Media District Specific Plan. And that is because the other 2 specific plans that are coming down the pipeline are also contemplating TDR policies. So we wanted to have a consistent process for all instances of TDR. So that's why it's an implementation item, but the plan itself establishes the framework and intent behind what should be included in the future TDR ordinance.
And you said it's in Chapter 10 implementation?
Yes.
Okay, so it's in there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Also, the question regarding talking about infrastructure and developers have to pay fees for that, correct? So assume I'm a developer that I come in and I want to have a project and then you're going to charge me development fees. Am I going to be, and then the second developer comes behind me, is the first developer then, that would be me, paying the fees for everyone else that comes behind me, or is it divided separately based on the project?
So one of the more important reasons why we do an EIR is to help us understand and establish future development impact fees and general fees. And the departments can use that as a basis for their future fee studies. As part of a fee, when a project is assessed a fee, it's for that project. So they're not paying for other future developments, they're paying into the city's infrastructure program to pay for the impacts of their project only. So that's the way the fees are. So there's a rough nexus and proportionality.
Okay, so it's not one person, the first person that comes along. It would be discouraging.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, why would I be the first one
Of
to
course,
start
yeah.
developing?
Yeah.
Because if I'm paying the fees for everybody else that comes behind me.
Yeah, they're only paying their fair share.
Okay, right.
Madam Vice Mayor, if I could contribute to that answer. In some cases where infrastructure is insufficient to serve a development which goes in, say, an underserved part of the community, they may have to pay for larger infrastructure to extend it to themselves. And in such cases, what the city can do is enter into a reimbursement agreement where if development comes between them and where they had to extend the infrastructure from, then the city would reimburse them from the new developers development impact fees for that same type of infrastructure. If it happened, we would structure it if it happens within, say, 10 years. It wouldn't be unlimited, but there are certain cases, it wouldn't not necessarily happen in Burbank, but it could, but that often happens in more rural communities where a developer will do what's called a greenfield development, and they'll build outside the typical area, and so they'll have to extend infrastructure, and we don't extend just the minimum infrastructure, we would extend an appropriately sized infrastructure that could handle future loads. So part of the infrastructure plan that is being developed requires that the infrastructure that's been determined, the growth in infrastructure that's required to accommodate the forecasted housing development and commercial development will have to be, plans will have to be developed for, say, increased sewage treatment capacity, and those increments of additional capacity will be divided into increments of development, and so the future development will be paying for the growth. Even though we may have a little bit of capacity left, they have to contribute toward the solution, the increased growth in infrastructure. So for each of our utilities, that type of infrastructure plan will be developed, and then it'll have to be turned into new fees for new increments of growth.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney.
I forget sometimes that his background is land use. Yeah.
No, I don't forget. As soon as he goes, I have something to say. I know something valuable. So another question from an email that we received asking, why is Johnny Carson Park designated a housing development site? Are we getting rid of Johnny Carson Park?
No, we are not.
Okay.
Earlier on in the planning process, we contemplated assigning density and FAR just as an underlying designation and possibly available for transfer of development rights. But that idea was not carried forward, but the map has to be updated.
Thank God. Okay, because we have a dog park going to be going in there too.
It would never have been
I'm
developed,
like,
yeah.
Johnny Carson Dog Park,
Yeah.
goodbye. We're going to put housing. We need open space as well. Thank you for that. So earlier, in the public comment period, there was expressing concerns regarding safety, egress, ingress, and being on a main street. Like, if you can explain to us, on some of these projects, are the main egress and ingress going to be off of a main street, or with the projects, would you require them to go from perhaps alleys to provide safety? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can briefly touch upon it. The city relies on our CSODs, the Complete Our Streets Objective Development Standards, which direct us on mobility and access and site access of that nature. So we follow what has been established in that document. And we do some site-specific analysis as well, and sometimes there's a transportation analysis that's required. So all of those factors go into analyzing and helping to shape the projects.
So if you have a project before you, is this the time to determine where the egress and ingress is going to be happening with this project, or is it going to be part of the EIR overall study?
By and large, it's set in objective development standards. So that's the nature of development. These days, we have to rely on objective development standards. They cannot be subjective or entirely reliant on outside studies. Occasionally, we can do that, but by and large, it's set on objective development standards.
Okay. Another note that I have here in regards to perhaps it's the heights of the buildings and shadows over other buildings. And I recall this during my visit early on at 4100, I believe, Riverside, where the height of the building and it was going to kind of take over the height, for the residential behind there. Is there a height or shadow requirement that we have in the city? Because I didn't see in the report that it addresses that.
So in the media district specific plan area, I'll speak just to that today. There is a height strategy, a whole map with a height strategy listed in there, and that focuses and concentrates the highest and tallest buildings in the center of the district, which are away from the lower scaled residential neighborhoods. And adjacent to those lower scaled residential neighborhoods, we have the lower heights that are allowed. So that's how we address any impacts from tall buildings on smaller, lower scaled neighborhoods.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I followed what you said. Can you?
Yeah, so it
It's
gets
simple.
taller in the middle and shorter as it goes out towards the neighborhoods.
Okay, so the height will be in the middle of the actual building?
Of the district itself.
Of the district.
Yeah.
So that would not have an impact then on the single-family homes or other maybe lower buildings in the area?
Correct, yeah. So we tried to step it down as it gets closer to those single-family and lower-scaled residential neighborhoods.
Okay, and that's included it's going to be in the overall plan, or is it in the EIR?
It's in the plan itself. There's a map listed in the Objective Development Standards section.
Okay, thank you. Madam Vice Mayor, I'll pause for a minute if you want to ask some questions, and then I'll get my notes finalized. Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. And I crossed off some of mine, so appreciate you asking them. Great. Thank you for the presentation and all the work that you've done on this specific plan. I know that you're working on several specific plans at once, in addition to everything else that's going on in the department, so appreciate all your hard work. So I'm looking at the documentation, and on page 55 is, I believe, the current district zoning as it stands now. Am I reading that right? Okay. On
Yes,
five.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then is there a map of the proposed districts? I thought there might have, I couldn't find it, of what the proposed districts, the zoning is going to be.
So for the media district, the strategy is to keep the zoning as is.
Okay.
However, the media district takes a different approach to development by looking at an intensity map, which is floor area ratio, and a density map, which is for dwelling units per acre.
Okay.
So that's how we describe what that kind of development is permitted on each property.
Got it. Okay. So with that said, if the community is looking at this map and wondering where would SB 35 projects go, AB 2011, SB 9, mixed use, how would they know where those are potentially possible to be? And how do you read the map to understand what kind of specific, like whether it's a business or a hotel or residential or mixed?
Yeah, because the state laws are varied and keep coming, and we can't anticipate what else will be in the future to put in our specific plan itself. This lists just what applies for city regulations. It doesn't include all of the state regulations. We have other information that describes where the state laws apply, which are by and large almost every property in the city that allows either commercial or residential, depending on which state law an applicant is invoking. So it's virtually impossible to put that into our plan, especially because the plan will live on beyond today. It will be in effect for, if it is adopted, for at least 15 years. And we don't know what will come from the state in those 15 years. So we can't describe all of the possible laws that would apply to each parcel in the district.
Okay.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Yeah.
On the next page that you referred to, attachment 1-56, you'll notice a table 6-1, permitted uses. And you'll notice in the columns, so the column headings are the land use type and then the zone designations. And anywhere you see an S in that table, you'll see above that S is defined as permitted when required by state preemption law. So given the number of laws that staff has confronted and had to deal with over the last 5 years or so, this is our best method for trying to figure out how to incorporate. It may have been that in the past we wouldn't have allowed the use, but given conflict between general plan and zoning, There are certain instances where those preempted uses, in the case of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units, multifamily residential with non-residential use, multifamily residential only, where you'll see across the row that those are permitted where, as Ms. Landry said, where a state preemption. So that's kind of one way for the public to reconcile the attachment 1-55 with 1-56 to see where that interplay is.
Yeah, yeah. And for the purpose of that, what we just discussed, the dark blue and the light blue, even though if it were 100% commercial would have an impact on the zoning, if it were under one of the S categories, the darker light blue wouldn't really have an impact. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that's more about density, okay. And then the red area is the planned development, so those ones those would not apply for the S's, right?
The planned developments are regulated under a different structure.
Okay. And is it possible to have a planned development on one of the blue spaces in the future? Would that be something that would be possible to do?
Property owners or applicants can apply for a planned development, and it can go through that process and ultimately be up to the city council to decide to approve it or not. Each planned development has a DA, a development agreement associated with it, which is subject to, again, the council's discretion.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, it's a little bit confusing on the, getting all the information, and I'm sure trying to figure out how to relay that to the community is also a challenge, but I'm trying to read this map to understand what the potential for the development is. So let's see. So speaking of that, looking at, all the state laws and this specific plan, how does all of that also integrate into the general plan? And then, of course, the arena numbers and all that. So I know this is a kind of a large question, but just briefly kind of describe how all those things come together and why this specific plan is an important piece of bringing that all together.
Right. I guess I can describe it as the general plan is the larger umbrella that covers the city. It establishes all of our baseline policy. The specific plans support all of those policies of the general plan. So it has to be consistent with those overarching policies and actions. So what is included in the media district specific plan directly supports prior policy decisions in the general plan. And that's the same for all of the specific plans that are in process. And then the specific plans themselves are supporting the housing element, which is part of the general plan. And as the council is familiar with, we have a certified housing element. We were fortunate to get it done on time. But as part of that housing element, the city was, required to commit to facilitating the development of housing, 8,772 units by the year 2029. And these specific plans are a really important part of ensuring and showing to the state that we are doing our part to facilitate the development of housing.
Okay, great. Thank you for explaining that. And then, so again, speaking of the community understanding this document and the process, and you mentioned that there'll be more opportunity for the community input, that there will be an EIR and that will continue the input. Does having an EIR mean that we now can't change anything in this plan, or is there still plenty of opportunity to bring in concerns and to make changes in case there is something that's still wanting to be updated?
Yes, absolutely. There is still opportunity. As part of the release of the draft EIR, there's a public comment period. And based on whatever comments that are received, we will study those and adjust and adapt in whatever way we need to respond to those comments. So that would be reflected in the final draft plan that comes to the council for consideration, as well as in the EIR.
Okay, so I think there's still some lingering questions as brought up during public comment, as well as our emails, and of course with SB 79 and the other concerns being integrated in, there will be more potential concerns. That I think understanding that this is, even though we're going through the process, is still not a set in stone. There's still a lot of space for
Absolutely.
Movement and adjustment. Okay, good.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Yeah.
Further, the California Environmental Quality Act, the procedures account for council changing the project. Should council wish to modify the project at any time, there is an evaluation process in CEQA to consider those changes. and either perform supplemental analysis or an addendum. And so CEQA can adapt to however the council, whatever project council ultimately adopts. It may require an additional amount of time to do a recirculated EIR, but there is a process for recirculation that's not completely foreign. We've done it on projects before. So you're not hemmed in by the CEQA process. It's just that if you do change the project in a substantial way, then CEQA just requires an additional feedback loop, some additional analysis, and a check to see whether any of the impacts changed, any of the mitigation changed, and then additional public notice. That's all.
Okay. So while there is room for having that process again, ideally we wouldn't want to do it twice because it is a long process, but it is available to us in case there are significant updates we want to change. Okay. And then one last bit was brought up by one of the public comments, and I had in one of my questions too, is that part of the media district area is in the fire hazard zone, and the fire hazard zone has been changed, the expansion of it, and AB 747 that was mentioned. How is that being integrated and considered, and has it been integrated and considered, and where does that apply for this?
Yes, the forthcoming draft environmental impact report has an entire section on wildfire. So that has an analysis of any effects of the changed maps on the district.
Okay, so that would be in the next step. Okay. And then lastly, just kind of piggybacking on what Councilmember Anthony asked about, I think even Councilmember Mullins asked too about the hotels. When we're thinking about the district plan, although we did talk about hotels briefly at our last discussion, it didn't really stick in my mind. My main focus has been housing, like this whole plan idea is around housing. But the question has come up in this process about hotels. And so I guess my first question is, are there any hotels that are in the works for this area already that we're looking at? And secondly, for hotels, like where would they be available to be built? And I guess that's a kind of a new-ish perspective for me. So if you could expand a little bit on the how hotels show up in this plan.
Yes, of course. For context, there are no applications in process right now for hotels in the media district. There are elsewhere in the city. But there are a lot of developers who reach out to staff about the media district and building hotels. So hotels are addressed in the media district specific plan. As we talked about earlier, they are conditionally permitted in certain zones, and that's depicted on the permitted use list that Mr. City Attorney referenced earlier.
Right.
So there's a whole section there on hotel and motels.
On page 56, okay.
Yeah, so that describes where and which zones that use is permitted. And again, it's a conditional use permit, so it'd have to go through a public process where the community would be informed and have the opportunity to comment on those projects. And then the Planning Commission itself would have to make a determination based on the required findings, and they can impose conditions to address any matters that need to be addressed. And then that project would also be appealable. A CUP is appealable to the council if it's necessary.
Okay, yeah, Councilmember Mullins.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think there was a perception that it doesn't come back to council, that it automatically goes to planning and it stops from there, and there's an appeal process. So, we're just verifying there is an appeal process. Obviously, comes to council for the CUP, and in case somebody wants to appeal it as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And I also have kind of just a general concern or thought about how, again, when I look at the specific plans, especially Media District and the Golden State and the downtown, housing is top of mind, right? And while hotels are important for our community, important for income, important for our tourism and all the other things, housing is a top priority for us. And it's a little bit, I'm just thinking about how they're competing for the same land. If they're both, if the blue area is basically where mixed-use housing and or hotels could go, that maybe if we can just do a little bit deeper dive in how we're thinking about how much hotels we would want to have in this district, how much, compared to housing, and if we do have a hotel development requested, that look at how much housing has been developed too. So it's rather than seeing it as a separate thing, maybe seeing it as a complete system to make sure that we're not, I mean, I don't know, I don't imagine it would be like, okay, we're going to get 10 hotels out of nowhere, but just to make sure we're keeping in mind that housing is priority in hotels while the important is also, is secondary.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, if I could briefly comment on that concept. I think it's an important concept. If you think about Burbank and just a few blocks from where we are, the intersection of San Fernando Road and Verdugo, we have Senior Artist Colony, which is affordable housing. We have a building at Verdugo, which is, I think, nearly 70 years old, which is low-income senior housing. And then we have, is it Belmont right next to it, and Avalon. But at the same intersection, we have Hilton Garden Inn, which was entitled with a CUP. We have Spring Hill Suites just a couple blocks away, which was entitled with a CUP. We have the Marriott Residence Inn, which was a development agreement for different purposes. And we have the AC Hotel, which was entitled with a CUP. But our analysis has shown that with these zoning alternatives, with all of the alternatives, we can actually build or accommodate 3 to 4 times our RHNA number without precluding hotels. In other words, there's enough capacity in the land use plans that we're not having to, say, take out commercial districts and make them residential, that between the opportunity sites, let alone that the council entitled with overlay zone, are already adequate to get us through 2029. And with the different plans that staff has brought you over the last year, the Golden State capacity, downtown Burbank TOD, that in downtown Burbank TOD alone, they brought a preliminary plan that could yield over 16,000 units just in the downtown area. So the real constraint that we're dealing with are the infrastructure constraints, that the distribution grid runs out of capacity. We need more substations to be able to move the power. Our requirements for vehicle charging start required as part of new development, and electrification required as new development start stressing our antiquated 4 kilovolt distribution requiring 10 kilovolt. Our sewer infrastructure, our sewer capacity ends up being stressed by the additional wastewater load. Water's a little different because we have the potential supply of advanced treatment, but it's actually our infrastructure that gets stressed with the land use plans. As it turns out, the planners have done a pretty good job coming up with alternatives that have could meet 4 or 5 RHNA cycles if we could only meet the infrastructure demands. And so we have examples of many different hotels. Some have been done, like the convention center was done with a planned development. They combined an old hotel and were able to add the convention center. And now there's a proposal that you'll see relatively soon where the owner of that property wants to add a couple more. Again, without invading what are our traditional residential zones to do so. So I think you're not going to find that it's this or that in terms of land use. We're really trying to strike a balance between how much demand we place on the infrastructure in different areas. But I think staff will bring forward, can bring forward plans that would achieve all of our housing yields if that was the desire of the council.
Yeah, and I thank you for expanding on that. And I think that the plan and the making the opportunity sites and having the designation of where things can go is one thing, and then there's the actuals, what actual developments get brought to the city, right? And so I think just having some recognition and some thought about, as the plans coming forward, looking at the specific plans, saying, if we get 4 or 5 hotels, not that we would, but if we did get 4 or 5 hotels and we haven't had a lot of residential planning, just to keep that in mind, that that's what really this goal is for.
Yes, and Vice Mayor, to add to what Mr. City Attorney described, I wanted to just clarify that the Media District specific plan, while it does heavily focus on housing and how to facilitate the development of housing, it hasn't forgotten our economy. So it has looked at very closely like how we can support our existing businesses and bring in new businesses to the city.
Yeah.
As part of that, we have studied, as part of our EIR, yes, hotels as well as residential, but also there's a really important nuance to our planning and citywide that it's not one or the other. they can have both options. So there is room and ability to accommodate both hotels and residential. For example, in the district, we are studying up to 400 keys for hotels, which is about, based on the average size of other hotels in Burbank, 2 hotels. And again, they can combine hotels with residential, which is a common inquiry that we get from developers that want to build in Burbank. So it's not either or, they can do both. Our plan is trying to have enough study and information to facilitate whatever comes our way, we can respond to and accommodate. But we have strategically increased density to make it more attractive to build residential. So that's, again, our top priority. So again, we have strategically made it so that it's more attractive to build housing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that yes and approach, I think, is really important. Yes and with a slight priority for housing, in my opinion. So those are my questions. Yes, Councilmember Mullins.
I actually have a question to add to the topic we were talking about. And if we have a project of a hotel, for example, and a developer comes in and says, I want to put 200 rooms in that site, does the city have the ability, or even city council, to request or demand or change that to say, well, we need you to maybe add 100 rooms and then the rest will be housing? To either divide it in half, have housing, have hotels, or even 50 housing units and then the rest will be rooms. Do we have that authority, ability, given that this individual owns or the company owns that lot?
So we cannot mandate what they include in their project necessarily like that. We do have development standards which put some guardrails around what kind of development can be built. So there's natural limitations on what can be built based on height, floor area ratio, those things. So that's something that developers have to keep in mind when they're proposing a project. And the way that we allow dwelling units versus commercial space is that dwelling units can, again, it's a more attractive option to build housing and then have some, accessory non-residential use with it. So the way our policies are structured, it's sort of a natural conclusion that they would want to do that and prioritize housing, but we can't necessarily mandate that they also include housing.
Thank you. I have one, it's kind of a common question together. With all the state mandates for housing, SB 35, AB 2011, and coming soon, SB 79, a developer doesn't really have to follow our development standard in the media district. They can just come in and say, I'm just going to put in SB 35, even though we adopt a media district plan and we have the AIR and do all this. So it's a question and a comment together because you can confirm that's what could happen. So it is really nothing we can do, even if we adopt this and somebody wants to come in and develop an SB 35 project.
So that is true. Someone could come in and invoke any of those state streamlining processes. However, the intent behind the whole effort for the media district specific plan is to put into place a set of regulations and development standards that are attractive, that people would want to develop under, that will allow them to get a return on their investment and use our city standards and adhere to our city vision for that area, because they have a more attractive alternative now to using one of those state streamlining laws. And there's a lot of strings attached to those state streamlining processes. There's labor requirements and a lot of other things that would deter some developers from using that. And if they have a more attractive city option, we believe that they will use it. So that's one of the main purposes of this effort and the other specific plans, is to have that be there as that carrot, I guess.
It's good to know that there is a carrot out there that they can take advantage of. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Anthony.
I just wanted to clarify. I mean, all the state bills, they do give bonuses to sort of density and streamline review, But they can't go above and beyond what's in the underlying code. They can't go beyond the FAR or the development standards other than what's very narrowly tailored in that state law, right? They can't just build anything.
They have to comply with the state law, what is set forth in any of those streamlined ministerial reviews. They have to comply with it. Under the state's affordable housing regulations, there's density bonus where they can ask for exceptions from development standards.
Sure. But those are
exchange.
bonuses built on what we have in our underlying code, meaning they get 20% above what we've got listed or
Correct,
25%. It's not just unlimited.
For those
Right.
state laws, they establish their own minimum densities for if you use AB 2011 or SB
Okay.
79, they have their own density.
Okay. But even those aren't unlimited, is what I'm saying. You can see it on paper.
Well, there's actually a phrase, unlimited density,
Oh,
for 100% affordable projects.
Oh, right.
So there are several categories under Government Code Section 65915, that's the state density bonus law, which we incorporate by reference. For an example, the project at 2814 West Empire by Robert Gross Park was a 100% affordable project. They are within a half mile of the Ritzy, so it's a transit priority project. And they were allowed to develop with zero parking. They actually did 7 or 15 spaces for 147 units. So that's an example. They were able to go 7 stories. There are other requirements that are triggered by height and mass, such as different fire requirements, fire lanes, hammerhead turnarounds, building construction type that practically limit a development because cost increases as building type increases. But there are categories of projects that are called unlimited density projects.
okay. Interesting. Okay. I wanted to get into a little bit of that with the table 6.1 on attachment 156. I did notice that the residential housing, multifamily, it's either by right or by right by state law in all of the zones. But when we come down to the bottom under supportive housing, it's either permitted or a CUP. Can you tell me why that's either or there? That seems to conflict. Why would it be both permitted but also need conditional use? Whereas the other one that is a PS, I get why that's there because state law could preempt us.
Sorry. Yes, usually when it has like 2 designations, it depends on if there's a state law that's being invoked for approving the project or if it's residentially adjacent, things of that nature. We're trying to account for multiple scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it have an S then if it's state law preemption?
The S is more for density for dwelling units.
Oh.
The supportive housing is more of a housing with services.
Okay.
So it's meant to help people transition away from homelessness.
So
things
what
like that.
would be permitted and what would be conditional use? Do you know do we have it listed here? I can't find the difference.
Yeah, there's some footnotes at the end of this table.
Yeah,
so
it says
footnotes,
13, 14.
Yeah.
So where's that?
So at the very end, let me scroll through. Sorry.
Page 1-65.
165.
Yeah.
Affordable housing. Oh.
Yeah.
1-65,
Right.
not 165.
So,
So-
footnote.
Yeah. Permitting if it meets criteria.
Supportive housing meets specific criteria.
Yeah, so footnote 13, it reads supportive housing that meets specific criteria specified in Article 11 of the Burbank Municipal Code. Sort of condensing it here. All
Upper floor.
other supportive housing not meeting that criteria would require a CUP.
Permitted above
So it depends on
commercial
the
use.
project specifics.
Okay, so it's like if we're looking at second floor and mixed use needs the CUP, but pretty much everything else. Okay, all right. Now that okay, thank you for that. I wanted to know because it seemed like we were restricting supportive housing, but that's only if it's second floor or above and mixed use. That's fine. I wanted to ask. We often have listed in other places what we call opportunity sites.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have opportunity sites listed here? Is it defined? Are they outlined? Do we know
So-
where they are?
Yes, as part of the EIR, the way we analyze the impacts to the community at large from the proposed plan, we identified opportunity sites. And so that's going to be in the EIR.
Okay.
So that's forthcoming.
Okay.
I understand it's a little confusing because it's not in the policy document. It's a reference to the EIR, and that's something we can fix moving forward.
Do developments in the opportunity sites, would they override any of the permitted uses? Are there allowances in the opportunity sites that are more lax or more opportunistic, I guess, than what's listed in our table 6.1 permitted uses? Or do they still have to comply with everything listed here?
So they don't affect any of the non-residential uses that are allowed on those sites.
Okay.
If an opportunity site exists and there's housing proposed, the intent behind that is to facilitate housing on those sites by making it a by right project, for example.
So opportunity sites, when we talk about opportunity sites in this current day, we're talking about opportunity to build housing.
Correct, housing.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So the phrase opportunity sites comes from the housing element.
Right.
When we adopted the housing element in fall of 2022, we identified opportunity sites for which the zoning did not yet permit the maximum yield of units we were counting on. Before the mid-cycle report, so 4 years from the housing element, last January, you approved an overlay zone to give effect to those opportunity densities to the opportunity sites. So this plan will simply incorporate those sites, and those will just be sites with the housing density consistent with the housing element. We won't call them opportunity sites anymore because they'll be sites with the density that we originally projected.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Sorry, I do want to add a little bit of clarification to that. For the purposes of media district specific plan, these are media district opportunity sites. They're not to be confused with the housing element opportunity sites. So,
Okay.
But yeah, that's all reflected in the forthcoming draft EIR.
Okay, it'll all be integrated there. Okay, great. All right, if there's no more questions, we are past 6, so if it's okay to wrap up? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for the presentation, and looking forward to the next step, EIR. Looking forward to the community outreach and hearing more from the community, and folks who are watching or in the audience who want to meet with us, please let us know. And we'll see you, I guess, when will we see you back with this? In middle of 26, or?
We're hoping to come back before the council January, February,
Oh, perfect, great, all right.
or sorry, February, March.
Okay,
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's in the presentation.
great, awesome, thank you. All right, so with that, then, we will take a 5-minute break to get situated, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Imagine I gavelled.